blue stuff. Let's go on to blue cards to start things off for today. Absorb Identity was a card that when it was spoiled, got a lot of attention. I have hype for blue. I don't think this is great, but this is another one of those cards that is definitely in the unique side of effects. So 2 mana instant speed card. Return target creature to its owner's hand. You may have shapeshifters you control become copies of that creature until the end of turn. Is this card good enough to be flexible in every deck? No. But if you're playing shapeshifters, this thing hits like a truck. Like, can you imagine bouncing your opponent's Croxer with this card? Or better yet, in Historic, bouncing their Uro with it? Just have all your creatures become copies of Uro. Like, I understand that's just killing half your board, don't worry. Sadly, does not stop the legendary clause. I'm sad. I tricked myself. I got excited for no reason. New cards, man. New cards. We all have to learn to read. Judge me at your own peril. Alright, so I guess the question is then, is there going to be stuff being played in Standard that I can bounce that is actively good to turn my board into a team of? Like, Lovestruck Beasts can't attack. Questing Beasts sack themselves. I haven't really thought of anything yet, if that's the case. What happens if you make them Skyclave Apparitions? That's probably pretty good. No, again, I think we've all done the same thing, right? They're becoming copies. They're not entering the battlefield, so Apparition doesn't work, and neither does Terror of the Peaks. Because they just become copies. Don't get me wrong, if you bounce Terror of the Peaks, your opponent just dies because you attack for 20. Yeah, like, I don't know if there is good shapeshifters. If there is, maybe this is fine, because just killing your opponent out of nowhere is exceptionally powerful, but I kind of talked myself into thinking it was good, and it's kind of not. So, never mind. Reading is hard. I don't know what this card is, so I'm going to check what it is real quick. This is just a 2 mana bounce spell you can foretell. That's just limited fodder. No worries about that. Okay, Alrund. Let's start looking at these gods. Look at the blue god. Well, one of the blue gods. There is multiple. Troll King is about the only thing I've thought of so far, to be fair. Yeah, that's fair. So yeah, Alrund here, 5 mana, does have a backside we're going to look at in a minute, because the backside is very relevant to why I think this card is kind of good. It gets +1/+1 for every card in your hand, and each foretold card you own in exile. I'm also quite high on this card, but I'm going to get to why in just a second. At the beginning of your end step, you choose a card type, then reveal the top 2 cards of your library. You put all cards of the chosen type into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. So, any deck that's going to be playing this, it's going to be a reasonable size when it comes down, and it is a draw, you know, whatever. Draw 1 to 2 a turn in a correctly built deck. The reason I'm excited about this card, however, is the backside, which there's a couple of reasons why it excites me. So let's bring up Hacker whisperingraven for you, the other half of this card you can cast. It is a 2 mana 2/3 flyer. That's quite the body. Yeah, the bird not dying to Bone Crusher Giant is huge. The fact this has a 3 toughness, really big deal. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you return it to its owner's hand and then scry 2. Now, that's good and bad. The reasons I'm high on this card, any deck that wants the front half of this, the Alrund half, is going to want to be blocking early. It's going to want to be soaking up damage and blocking creatures. And you'll notice that effect only triggers when you deal combat damage to a player, not to a creature. So casting this on turn 2 as a blocker, that just flies. Literally, because it has the keyword flying on it. You just get to block for days. This thing keeps you safe forever. And it keeps you safe, more importantly, until turn 5, when you can attack with Hacker, pick it up, and cast Alrund, because you're now ready to cast this thing that has all these cards in your hand for whatever reason that might be. The other slick interaction that I love with this card is that Alrund is the front face, which, if you're not familiar as to why that's important, it means if I cast Urion's Sky Nomad, or even just Flicker of Fate, or any of the other, tricky exile effects, and exile Hacker Whispering Raven, it will come back as Alrund, which is not something that a lot of people necessarily think about. So you just get to cast this on turn 2, block for forever, cast the Sky Noodle, and then start drawing cards in the end step, which is great. That seems like a really slick line of play. This is self-enabling, it defends you until you can cast the front side of it, and it plays really well with a lot of the best blue and white cards that are currently in Standard. I like it. I'm on board. I'll be casting myself some Hacker Whispering Ravens. I think it's very, very nice. Very, very cool. Unique card. It's kind of just everything I want from blue Magic cards. Alrund's Epiphany. Let's take a look at this one together. I'm like 99% sure it comes back on the front, yeah. I could be wrong, but I would put money on it. I'm almost certain that's how that works. Alrund's Epiphany here, 7 mana, that's a lot. 7 mana is expensive. Sorcery here creates 2 1/1 blue bird creature tokens with flying. Then you take an extra turn and exile Alrund's Epiphany. It also foretells for 6. And 6 is kind of the base rate for an extra turn spell at this point. We've seen Part of the Water Veil, Khan's Temporal Sundering, that kind of thing. So if you're casting this from Foretell, it's basically another taking turn effect that makes some bodies. The reason that I think this one might be a little teeny bit better than those, like a little bit more exciting, is mainly because of, again, there's cards in this set that let you cast things at instant speed from Foretell. As far as I'm aware. Like, again, kind of picking up the set as we go, so I could be wrong. But if there is a way to enable casting this thing at instant speed, that's quite good. Taking extra turns at instant speed is kind of fucked. Taking extra turns is fine in general, honestly. I'm not entirely sure this is great by itself, but if there are tools to help it kind of get over that line, definitely a card that we could see seeing some play. Playing very well with other Foretell cards because of that whole smoke screen effect that we've talked about a couple times already. I like it a lot. Really cool, really unique. A Null gets a reprint. That's a cool one. Wish it didn't exile. Yeah, that'd probably be a bit good though, to be honest. A Null gets a reprint. Good to have. Don't hate it. Next up is one of my favorite cards in this set. I am so hyped for this card. Ascendant Spirit. Now this card has a lot of text. It is a 1 mana 1/1, but it does not stop there. Snow creature. It being a snow creature, kind of relevant. There's a few cards in the set that care about snow permanents, obviously. So it being a snow permanent, good stuff. Spirit. We've already established Spirit. Very relevant creature type at this point. And then the rest of this card box resembles Figure of Destiny. If you've never played with that card, let me walk you through it. 2 snow mana will let you turn it into a Spirit Warrior with base, power and toughness, 2/3. Now, we've already established that cards that let you do stuff on turn 2 when you're missing a turn 2 play in your aggro shell, good stuff. 3rd toughness, good stuff. Beats Bone Crusher Giant, that's very important. It's a good stat line. At that point, you can then spend 3 snow mana. If it's now a warrior, which is what the first effect does, you can put a flying counter onto it, turn it into a Spirit Warrior Angel with base power and toughness 4/4. So again, at this point, if you've got nothing to do with your mana, you're still doing things with Ascendant Spirit. If you draw this card late and you've got all the mana, you just get to like pump it into Ascendant Spirit and turn it into the very best it can be. Then the last line of text on this, if it's now an angel, you put 2 +1/+1 counters onto it, turning it into a 6/6, and it gains whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Now the important part of that last piece of ability is that it doesn't cap. You can activate that multiple times if you want to, and that it gains ability will also stack for that reason. So you will never be left with spare mana in a world where you have an Ascendant Spirit in play, because you can activate that last ability as many times as you want. You can pump it at the end of your opponent's turn and hold up mana. Exactly, that's really, really good. But you can use that last ability as many times as you want to, and for every time that you do it, it will draw you an extra card when it connects. This card is just good at every stage of the game. It's good on turn 1. It's significantly worse on turns 2 to 5. But then on turn 6 onwards, you're just dumping mana into it, and it's a must-kill threat that has a big ass. It ends up being like a 6/6 when it reaches the top mode, and it draws you cards. Like, mid-combat with Jaune, spicy. We haven't looked at Jaune just yet, but for sure, that's a thing you can do by untapping Snow Permanents and just chaining mana into this thing, Wilderness Reclamation style. Yeah, I love this card. I'm very, very high on it. I think it's just good all the time, and your opponent just has to kill it. A large part of the trick, I think, is going to be making this thing actually dodge Bonecrusher Giant. Obviously, if you're on the draw, casting it on turn 1, it dies. And if you're on the play, you need to be careful about when you're leveling. You probably have to just level in your own turn and attack for 2 to make sure that it doesn't get bone crushed. I think that's the big thing. I think the only other thing I want to mention about this card real quick that a lot of people seem to have also missed is the second mode puts a flying counter onto it. That is relevant for 2 reasons. One, flying. Flying is good, unsurprisingly. But more importantly, it is a flying counter, which means at 3 mana, you can make this card dodge Heartless Act, which is another removal spell that you really want to be good against if you can. You can also just, if you have 3 mana up, your opponent can't Heartless Act this. You can just activate it in response and put a counter on it to fizzle the Heartless Act, which is slick. I think this card is great. I'm a big fan. I think it's going to see a whole lot of play. I like it a lot. I think it's very, very cool. Okie dokie. Augury Raven here, draft filler, not particularly worried about this. Avalanche Caller, don't know what this card does. 2 mana, 1/3. You can turn Snowlands into 4/4s with Hexproof and Haste. I don't think that's bad, but I also don't think it's good. The lands having Hexproof is pretty damn relevant there. I don't hate that. That seems pretty reasonable. Behold the Multiverse. This is the perfect example, I think, of the kind of card you're going to be smoke screening in with your lovely sweeper, especially in blue-white control. 4 mana instant here, scry 2, draw 2. It's an effect you have seen a number of times at this point. Chemist's Insight, Glimmer of Genius, those kind of things. 4 mana, draw 2 effects at instant speed. They're just playable in standard, even without any extra text on them. They are just perfectly fine, perfectly reasonable. More importantly, this foretells for 2 mana. Which is very impressive. It means you can just cast this on turn 3 if you want to, after foretelling it on turn 2. Very much like most of the other foretell cards we've talked about already. But also it means on turn 5 you can actually just cast a card draw spell and absorb, or and Sinister Sabotage, or whatever counter spell you might be playing in that 3 mana slot. It's good at base rates, just casting it is fine, and it's pretty damn good on foretell. Obviously this card gets better the more foretell cards you're playing. But as we've already established, the sweeper's going to see a fair bit of play. This is probably going to see a fair bit of play. It only really takes 1 or 2 more cards to really kind of get the mind games ticking with Doomscar, which I think is very, very cool. So I like Behold the Multiverse. I think it's a very well-designed card. Fits the archetype it was designed for. And that's the kind of thing that you want, right? You want cards like this to be in your set. The art's also just beautiful. Art is stunning. I love all the pinks and purples. So I like that as well. It's pretty good. Berg Rider here, not massively relevant. Don't think there's anything more than draft filler. Bind the Monster. I like this card a lot. It was revealed by Covert Go Blue yesterday, I think. Do I think Arena will only give you priority if you foretell cards are instant speed? Oh, I hadn't really thought about that. Yeah, that might be an issue. I guess I was thinking about it in the realm of paper, to be honest, because that's where my brain was, but I guess you can always hold full control, but that is a bit sweaty. Yeah, I don't know. I guess that's something that remains to be seen, and we'll have to wait and see when it grants you priority and when it doesn't. I don't have a concrete answer for you, sadly. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Mind games within mind games, exactly. Huge brain. Huge brain. But yeah, Bind the Monster here. I think this card is actually really good for a common. This is almost certainly Blue's best common in Limited, I would think. So 1 mana Enchantment Aura. When it enters the battlefield, you may tap Enchanted Creature. It deals damage to you equal to its power, and then the Enchanted Creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. This is good. 1 mana is cheap. There is a very unique synergy that I think this card plays very well with, and that is Scourge of the Skyclaves. Being able to tap creatures and like punch yourself in the face to grow your own Scourge of the Skyclaves is sweet. That is some bullseye tech. I don't think this is worse Bubble Snare by any stretch. Bubble Snare didn't tap the creature. You had to kick it to tap the creature. It only kept it tapped if it was already tapped. It cost 4 mana to tap it, I think, from Bubble Snare. But yeah, this having that very unique synergy with Scourge of the Skyclaves, and also just being 1 mana all the time. It's just a really efficient. I think John Ramos raises a good point. Casting this on a Lovestruck Beast would suck. It would really suck. This is also just a very cheap aura, which blue-white auras might want in Historic, especially given that it's just got to be better than Heliod's Punishment, right? Which is the card they're currently playing. I did, Jimmy. I did sleep. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think this card is sweet. I think it's got some very niche utilities, and in Limited, it's going to be the nuts. Will it see standard play? It does kind of suck against specifically Lovestruck Beast, but I like it. I think it's very efficient. I think this is kind of being slept on just a little bit. It's quite good. I would expect to see a bit of this around the table when it comes to sucks against Bone Crusher. To be fair, I'm not sure there's very many pieces of spot removal that are good against Bone Crusher. So I get your point, but like you take 2 damage. No, you don't take 2 damage because it's a target. You only take the 4. Kind of like a cast out effect or a glass casket, because it's an enchantment, not a spell. So not having to worry about that with Bone Crusher Giant. But yeah, I like Bind the Monster. I think this is a card that could definitely find a couple of homes, especially with Scourge of the Skyclaves knocking around. Brine Barrow Intruder, some filler. I don't know what this card does, so I'm going to check it real quick. Okay, so this is a snow version of Icy Manipulator, which will be really, really good in Limited, but probably not particularly good anywhere else. I'm sad that this is the snow version of Icy Manipulator. That's not okay. Anyway. Up next, I know we got some fans in the chat of this one, and I'm also a fan of this one. Cosmina, God of the Voyage. Another one of these fantastic gods that has a backside on it. The backside on this card is the main selling point, so we're going to get to that in just a second, after I spend some time explaining Cosmina, because this card's a little difficult to understand. It is a 3-mana 2/4, which again, a relevant stat line that we've established before. 4 toughness, kind of relevant in the world of Lightning Bolts, if it's a card that can see play in Eternal formats. It's just not a bad thing for standard either, to be fair. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may exile it. If you do, it gains the text whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control. If it's exiled, you may put a voyage counter onto it. If you do not put a voyage counter onto it, return it to the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it, and draw X cards, where X is the number of voyage counters on it. Now, I understand that was a lot of text. It's not particularly intuitive. The important parts are, during your upkeep, if it's in play, you can exile it if you want to. When it's sitting in exile, every time a land comes into play, you can choose to either put a voyage counter on it, or bring it back really big and draw cards for every voyage counter that was already on it. I think this is a really flexible little card, honestly. I'm not sure it's better than Krasis, like some of the people in the chat are claiming. But you will often draw cards with this, I think. There's a good chance you will happily exile it away and bring it back 2-3 turns later and just cast yourself a 3 divination on side of a massive, massive body. But the part of this card that I'm excited about, that I think is the best part of it, is the backside here, the omen keel. This is a heck of a vehicle, this one. Commander players, rejoice. You can now play a literal vehicle as your commander if you would like to. But this is a 2-mana 3/3. Now, where have we seen a 2-mana 3/3 vehicle before? It's got crew 1 on it. Now, where have we seen a 2-mana 3/3 vehicle with crew 1 on it before? Oh yeah, Smuggler's Copter. I'm so glad that everyone's noticed. The old looter scooter. I know there's 2 of them in this set. Don't ruin the surprise, John Ramos. More importantly, this card has text on it as well. Whenever a vehicle you control deals combat damage to a player. Oh, where have we seen that on a 2-mana vehicle with crew 1 before? That player exiles that many cards from the top of their library. You may play lands from among those cards as long as they remain exiled. Oh, baby. That's pretty good. Obviously, the more vehicles you play, the better. As John Ramos does say, there is another pretty good one in this set that we'll get to in a little bit. But this is self-enabling. Like, if you attack your opponent for 3, they exile 3 cards from the top of their library, and you just get to keep hitting your land drops. Keep hitting your land drops for shenanigans, you know? This is great against sweepers. It's really good with your Doom, the Fattel Sweeper. I keep forgetting what it's called. Doom Scared? The Fattel Sweeper. It's good with that. It obviously just doesn't get swept away by it. It's just an absurd... Doomscar, thank you. I will remember it eventually. It's just an absurd rate on a vehicle. Like, we've established, like, Copter obviously saw as much play as it did because it was colorless. You could play it in everything. But this card is good. And the flexibility of casting it on the front side and the mid to late game, turn 3, turn 4, exiling it away and just like drawing tons of cards with it. It just means that drawing the second one doesn't suck. And that was kind of some of the power of Smuggler's Copter too, was that when you drew the second one, if you didn't want it, you just discarded it to the Smuggler's Copter. There's some very obvious comparisons to be drawn here. I think this card's really good. They synergize and combine with Dryad and Azusa. Now that's interesting. I'm not sure you're going to be flipping quite enough lands from your opponent to be doing that every turn, but that is interesting for sure. I think this card's good. I think it's very good. The rate is great. It doesn't die to a Bone Crusher Giant. Respect the Omen Keel, especially if you're a commander player. This thing is going to come and kick your ass. It can be their commander because it's a legendary creature on the front side. Like, this card's great. Highly suggest picking yourself up some copies of Cosmina / Omen Keel if you're fans of any of the things we've been talking about there. This next card is one that I am very excited about. I think this is a huge sleeper. Some people are slowly starting to cotton on to this card, but I think it's great. Already Brim with it in Commander sounds good, man. I agree. I think it's something you want to be doing. Cosmos Charger here. 4 mana 3/3 with flash and flying. That's not a great rate. You expect to be slightly better than that for 4 mana. But it's also not awful. Like Nightpack Ambusher was 4 mana 4/4, didn't have the flying. So if the text is relevant, it's probably good enough. And by God, is the text relevant on this thing. Foretelling cards from your hand cost you 1 less to do and can be done on any player's turn. Woof. Moonfolk Land bounce synergies make it pretty good. I like that. It's pretty good. I'm already so on board for having on turn 5 just flash this thing in, and then foretell something that I can cast at any point during the next turn. More importantly, this also has foretell. You just get to smoke screen in your payoff and your enabler at the same time. I think it's really cool. I think this card is like honestly busted. Like, it's not broken by itself, but it enables so many unfair turns. Even in like the worst case scenario, it lets you panic Sweeper, right? Because like if you desperately need to get Doomscar into your Foretell zone, it can let you do that at instant speed. We can disagree, right? Absolutely, that's the whole point of card reviews. Like, I have gone on the record many times as saying that Magic players actively suck at reviewing cards. Like, it's so difficult to do, and that includes me. You know, all I can do is give you my opinions, looking at cards at face value. And if this thing ends up in the bulk bin, fair enough. Like, I certainly could be wrong, but you're right. Like, it does play very well with the white Foretell cards, some of the blue Foretell cards, and I think the card's just like fine by itself. It's a lot of work to get you Foretell cards at instant speed. I don't know if it is though, right? Like I think a lot of the power of this card again is from the fact you're already going to be playing cards you want to play. Like I'm not playing Foretell cards just because they foretell. I'm playing them because they're like, you know, good enough anyway. Foretell, you know, the universe, the card draw spell and stuff like that. But playing a card that makes all of my good cards better, that's also just like kind of defendable by itself, while also being able to use it to represent my sweepers on turn 2, represent my card draw spells. Like, I think that's really powerful. I could definitely be wrong about this one, but this is a card I'm pretty high on. I think it's very much a hidden gem. I like it a lot. I think it's also just a spirit. It's a flash spirit, which is a relevant creature type at instant speed too. So you never know. I like this one quite a lot. I think for me it's a sleeper. I rate it quite highly, but I'm also willing to accept this is the kind of really the kind of card that is either going to be really, really good or bargain bin garbage, like one way or the other, right? So completely reasonable. I like it a lot. I can definitely see why some people don't. Cyclone Summoner here is definitely a bit of a shenanigans, not particularly great or anything. Disdainful Stroke getting a reprint. Good stuff. Always happy to have Disdainful Stroke in my standard formats. Draugr Thought Thief here is a rogue. Yeah, this is not. This is just filler. Yeah, I agree. Pretty awesome. Frost Augur here is a cool little card. We'll take a second to talk about Frost Augur. I think some of these creatures having the snow creature type is kind of relevant, as you'll see as we get to some of the powerful gold cards and stuff later on. Like, some of them just care about snow permanence. So being able to turn the cards that care about snow permanence into draw spells is something, definitely, for sure. So we've got another 1-mana snow creature here. Is a wizard for those decks that care about parties and stuff like this. And this is just Tendo Icebridge, basically, on a creature. You pay a snow mana and tap it to look at the top card of your library. If it's a snow card, you can pop it in your hand. If the snow deck is good, it'll probably want this as a 1-mana draw cards kind of spell. If it's awful, it probably won't. It's really kind of that simple, but it's definitely a card you want to know exists, I think. Whoop. Ye old Frost Augur. It's not bad, not bad. Okay, so let's take a look real quick at some of these more commons and uncommons. I've not seen a lot of the commons and uncommons in these sets, so I just got to kind of like glance over and make sure that nothing is surprisingly good. I don't think those are rather good. I think Giant's Amulet looks to be a bit poop. Giant's Grasp will be pretty damn good and limited, I guess, in exactly the Giant deck. But hey, this one I am excited about. Let's take a look at Glimpse the Cosmos. This card is sweet. So Glimpse the Cosmos here, 2-mana sorcery. You may look at the top 3 cards of your library, put one of them in your hand and the rest on the bottom in any order. Well, sorcery speed, Anticipate is a bit crap. But thankfully, this card has some more text. As long as you control a giant, you can cast Glimpse the Cosmos from your graveyard by paying a blue mana rather than paying its mana cost. If you do, you have to exile it from the graveyard. 1 mana Anticipate is a lot better. A heck of a lot better. So, how easy is it to enable Glimpse the Cosmos? Surprisingly so. Mainly because one of the best giants that's currently in Standard is Kroxa, Titan of Death's Hunger. Death's no. Yeah, is it? No, hang on, what? Yeah, Kroxa, it's Kroxa. Names. What is going on with me today? Yeah, basically, that's a deck that kind of cares about putting cards in its graveyard anyway, and also tends to play cards like Liliana, which just let you discard stuff from your hand. Rankle, Master of Pranks, lets you discard cards from your hand if you want to. And then there's just things like Maya Triton, some of the sagas in this set that just kind of mill over cards incidentally. This is the perfect example of a card you can mill over and just get kind of like additional value from doing the thing that your deck already wants to do. It plays really, really well with Kroxa itself, like turn 5, bringing it back and then casting this, digging for cards. It's just like not good, but fine on turn 2. You know, I think it plays very, very well with those synergies of like milling it over or discarding it to your discard effects from the cards that I normally see play in Kroxa shells anyway. So I think this one's pretty good. We'll almost certainly see a fair share of play in any deck that can enable casting it from the graveyard pretty consistently. I know the Versus Live guys have played a fair bit of Glimpse the Cosmos. They've been fairly high on it. I can definitely see why, quite frankly. I think it's pretty good. Graven Law here, 5-mana Snow instant. Again, Snow, somewhat relevant, obviously, from this set. Scry X, where X is the amount of snow you spent to cast this spell, and then draw 3 cards. I love me a Jace's Ingenuity. And this is Jace's Ingenuity, but occasionally better. It's good. There's not an awful lot to say about this. It's a kind of known effect. We've seen Jace's Ingenuity see play in standard formats as a card draw spell of choice for control decks and stuff in the past. If there is a snow control deck, this is probably pretty good in it. Especially given that there are other cards in the set that can find this for you. And you can just kind of always make sure you can just be scrying 5, like a reasonable number at a time with this, before drawing 3, and that's strong. That is definitely strong. Graven Lore, pretty cool. I think this card is flexible and we'll see play in like snow-based control decks. Icebreaker Kraken here is a card that has been spoken about by a few people. Hey, Funky Flump, thank you very much for your host. I appreciate that. That's super, super appreciated. Hopefully you're having a lovely day today. Thanks for sending your folks my way. Hopefully you had a great stream. Icebreaker Kraken here, one of the later spoilers to this set. I don't rate this card very highly. I know some people like it, but I don't. It is a 12 mana 8/8 that costs 1 less to cast for every snow land you control. If that said snow permanent, we might be talking. But snow land, not quite as good. When it enters the battlefield, artifacts and creatures target opponent controls don't untap during the next untap step, and you can return 3 snowlands you control to your hand to put it back in your hand. The text on these cards is making your head spin. They do a lot of things. There is some wordy cards in this set. I don't think this is very good. It's not like Pearl Lake Ancient, where you're putting it back into your hand from the graveyard with the last ability. It's only from play. This card gets blocked forever, and it doesn't even tap the things when it comes in. It just keeps them tapped if they're already tapped. I don't like it. I think it's pretty bad. That's what I'm here for. That's why we have a card review today, right? Fingers crossed. Think Icebreaker Kraken is pretty garbage, but I'll do my best to break things down. I just also have to stop and read them sometimes because, as you say, there's a lot of words on some of these cards. So Igna, I don't think this is very good. I'm not particularly worried about it. Harbinger, I don't know what this card does. This probably isn't great either, to be honest. So there's some limited filler here towards the bottom. Mystic Reflection, however, is definitely a very, very cool card. I'm excited for this one. I know a lot of people are excited for this one, but there's also the fair share of critics that think this is going to be vastly overrated. Mystic Reflection here, a 2-mana instant speed spell. You may choose target non-legendary creature. The next time that one or more creatures or planeswalkers would enter the battlefield this turn, they enter as copies of the chosen creature. You can also cast this with Foretell for a single blue mana. Now this card does a lot of things. More importantly, it's interaction, because let's say, for example, your opponent casts their Ugin, the Spirit Dragon. Well, I'm going to cast this and target my my Stonecoil Serpent. Yeah, their Ugin will enter as a lovely 0/0 Stonecoil Serpent and swiftly go to the graveyard, which seems pretty good if you ask me. More importantly, this does some really cool things on your side of the battlefield with cards that are well established in the format at this point. Mainly Terror of the Peaks, obviously turning everything into copies of Terror of the Peaks. Kills people pretty quick. Urian, Sky Nomad, you're going to be doing a whole lot of flickering if you're going to be turning stuff into Urians. And even stuff like Scoot Swarm plays pretty well with this, because you're obviously making tons of a creature at the same time, so if you can highlight anything that's particularly cool, you get to make a lot of copies of the cool thing. This feels like a combo piece that can also be interaction, and I think that's pretty powerful. Yeah, I like this card a lot. I think in Historic, this plays pretty well with Cauldron Familiar, which is a combination that people have definitely forgotten about and stuff in the past, because you can just cast this, sack the cat to your oven, and then bring the cat back in as a copy of whatever you want it to be a copy of, which seems pretty sweet, honestly. In some kind of like Grixis sack shell, maybe with like Seagate Stormcaller and stuff maybe as well. And again, this is another card that's just got like, I'm happy to play it, and it also just happens to have Foretell stapled onto it, so I can kind of smoke screen it away with all those other cards that I'm interested in foretelling on turn 2. So I like this one a lot. I think it's very flexible and definitely very unique. Keep your eye on Mystic Reflection, I think. I like it a lot. Next up, we got Ovar, the Allthorn. This card seems kind of hard to evaluate, but I know some people are quite high on this as well. 4 mana changeling, so all the tribal decks, good for you. You got yourself a nice little tool here. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, if it targets a permanent that you control, you make a copy of that permanent. Whenever a spell or ability your opponent controls would cause you to discard Ovar, you create a token that is a copy of the thing that made you discard it. No, you create a token that's a copy of target permanent, sorry. I misread the card. Okay. So things that come to mind immediately. Discarding this to a Croxer from your opponent is pretty disgusting. If they cast it and make you discard a card, you just get to make a token of any permanent on the battlefield. Be it land. You could target lands with this. It could just be a ramp spell. Or you can copy a planeswalker, a creature. Like that's really good in the face of Croxer. The other side of things, creating tokens that are copies of permanent is powerful. That's a good thing to be doing. I suppose it depends on whether there's decks that you kind of want to be casting instants or sorceries that target permanents you control. You can copy Croxer, yeah, I mean, sure. I guess you make a copy of the Croxer, make them discard a card back before the token dies. Sure, that's not the worst. This is flexible. This does some unique stuff. I'm very interested in this card because it says the word permanent. I think if it said, creature or something like that, it would be significantly worse. But copy of target permanent means this is never blank because it can always just be a ramp spell. It also makes me think that maybe a card like this plays very well in like some pseudo storm shell. If you can just like target your lands with spells. I'm not sure how easy that is to do, but Twiddle Storm in Modern is the first thing that comes to mind. But if this is in play and you're just like casting instants and sorceries that target your lands and just getting copies of your lands, that could lead to some weird ass combo kill. Card's sweet. You don't really care about the body too much, but it does some cool things, and it being a changeling might be relevant. Lets it be playable in multiple things. There's a spell in Standard that hits a land and replaces it. Yeah, Cleansing Wildfire. Talk about turning Cleansing Wildfire into a rampant growth. That's pretty solid. Just destroy a land, replace the land, draw a card. Get the land from Wildfire. So it literally turns Cleansing Wildfire into rampant growth, draw a card. Yeah, that's not terrible. Lotus Breach. I don't think copying Lotus Field works the way that you want it to, because you still got to sacrifice lands. But maybe if you have like a Blood Sun in play or something, that might be fine. Yeah, card's really flexible. And target permanent is a very scary piece of text, so I'm definitely on board for keeping my eyes on that. Wildfire, that's a spicy one. Sure, I can definitely see that. None of these cards are particularly good. It's inspired. Reflections. I don't think Reflections is great either. I know a few people are kind of on this card for choosing creature types, but I just don't think 5 mana do-nothings are very playable, sadly. So I would be skeptical of this one. None of this seems great. Okay, we'll talk about Saw It Coming, mainly because this card is really funny. And also, EDH bait, yeah, it seems good. Cleansing Wildfire. Oh, sure. Yeah, that was Patch that brought that up. It's a pretty good little notice. I agree. Saw It Coming is one of my favorite cards in the set, just because the name is so funny. And it's another one of those cards that, yeah, the flavor on this is just great. The flavor text is great, just how predictable. And again, this is another one of those cards that plays really well with all the other super controlling Foretell cards. You can quote me on this if you want, but I honestly think Foretell reminds me of Energy from Kaladesh, which people didn't realize how powerful Energy was until they realized how much better it got the more cards you played with with it on. It was a super parasitic mechanic for sure, but Attune with Ether was not a playable card when it just said add a basic land to your hand, but it was a playable card when it said grab yourself a basic land and also do one of the following: fuel your Aetherworks Marvel, or make a Thopter, or make your burn spell deal 2 more damage, or do you get the point. Like, the more cards you play with energy, the more flexible and universally powerful all of your energy cards got, and Foretell feels super similar to me. I can play this counter spell in my deck. I can play the white sweeper in my deck. I can play the blue draw card in my deck, and I'm going to be foretelling a card on turn 2 most games. And then my opponent's like, oh, well, I have to play around counter magic, and I also have to play around the sweeper, and I also know that if it happens to be the card draw spell, then I shouldn't have played around either, and you just get to draw cards at the end of my turn. Like, that's where I think the power is in Foretell. The more playable Foretell cards you have, the better all of your Foretell cards are going to get. And that's what makes me excited about a card like Saw It Coming, because yes, at face value, it is a cancel. But it is a cancel that says your sweeper is more mysterious, your card draw spell is more mysterious and flexible, and that's what gets me excited. I like it. I like it a lot, and it wouldn't surprise me if Blue-White Foretell, or even just like, you know, Esper Foretell or something like that, was a very playable deck in Standard. The flavour of this card is great, by the way. I love this. It's just fantastic. Like it a lot. Strategic Planning getting a reprint. Solid. Strategic Planning sees play. It's always pretty reasonable. I don't know what this card does real quick. This could not be good. It's very expensive. Okay, that seems like it's the case for blue.